All right, and welcome back to the Remedial Film Class Podcast. I'm your host, Dan.
I'm Travis.
And I'm George.
And as you guys know, George ain't seen no movies, but we're working on him 1 week at a time.
This week's movie is American Werewolf in London.
It's an American Werewolf.
An American Werewolf in London.
How?
Starring Dr. Pepper's David Naughton. George is like, what's a Dr. Pepper?
Have you had hot Dr. Pepper with a lemon?
Yes, I had it at your place.
Oh,
I think.
right. Yes, it's the only way to drink Dr. Pepper. I had one today. It was delightful.
Talk about being typecasted. Like, he probably thought he was going to be typecasted as the Dr. Pepper guy, and then he wound up being typecasted as the guy who became a werewolf and was naked.
You do see his balls. Spoiler alert for George. Hey, so George, have you ever heard of this movie?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, well that's great. Do you have any idea what it's going to be about?
A werewolf?
It's a horror film, I guess. I don't know. It's a werewolf. The werewolf thing.
Have you ever seen any werewolf movies? Are you familiar with lycanthropy or any kind of werewolf lore?
Like what?
Yeah.
Lycanthropy. It's like therapy for dogs.
Oh.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that word became big because of the Underworld movies where they named
Say it
that
again?
group lycanthropy.
Lycanthropy. Okay.
They called them lichens in the Underworld movies.
Oh, I get it. Okay. No, I don't know. Well, do I know anything about it? Yeah, I mean, the full moon and the werewolf turns from a man to a werewolf and terrorizes people and then turns back. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's all I really know.
And do you
That's
have any
basic
idea?
knowledge.
Do you know who John Landis is?
No.
Okay. Good.
Sweet.
All right. Well, hey, we're gonna let George watch that movie, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back, George. We took your werewolf maiden flower, and here we are.
Yes, you did. You sure did.
Well, after last week, I'm hesitant to let you talk first because I don't want you to ruin my two pages of notes I have here.
Kill your notes.
But
Well, I didn't take any notes this time.
okay.
I normally do jot down a few things, but I didn't this time. I just sat and watched and enjoyed.
Well, what did you learn? What's your first impression?
First of all, let me just say that I'm really enjoying this.
Okay, good.
Like, I'm really enjoying this. This movie was not what I expected. It's not. I thought it was just like an old horror flick. It's
Right.
not that.
No.
It's almost like Shaun of the Dead kind of.
Well, he did say, the director of that movie did say that he was highly influenced by John Landis's Werewolf. So,
Okay.
makes a lot of sense.
Well, obviously there is, there's terror in it. There's suspense. You just have scenes in that movie that are, I don't want to say like outlandish, but like he's in a porno theater and he's talking to all the people that he killed, and at this point, like, he doesn't even care. We're getting way too far into the movie, way too fast. But
Did it leave an impression?
yes,
Okay.
and it was refreshing to watch something that was original.
And what's crazy is the movie's like 40 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like all I ever see anymore is this being remade and that being remade, and it's like, oh, this is a new movie, but it's really just this other movie rebranded. This was going in thinking it was a werewolf movie. Absolutely, totally original.
in my mind, it is the werewolf movie. And what's funny is my other favorite werewolf movie came out the same year, was The Howling. I was 6 years old when this movie came out, so I wasn't old enough to watch these movies, but London was one of the first movies I snuck down when my parents went to bed without them knowing it. So I was probably like 9. I was very impressionable, and I saw Fangoria magazines and stuff in the 7-Elevens, and I would leaf through them, and I saw all these creations that Rick Baker created, and it made me such a fan at such an early age. But I only knew him from this movie, and then I snuck and watched Greystoke. I watched all these movies, and I found out that he was involved in these movies. And when I look at his IMDb, I realize how important he was in my life and in my childhood and my adulthood. He won an Oscar. They created the category the year that he made this creature, and he won the first Oscar for special effects.
Okay, I can see that. This movie really stands the test of time. It was cutting edge
at the time.
No, I mean, I mean, obviously there's better effects now, but it stands the test of time.
I can even argue that it stands. The practical effects in this movie stand up to today's CGI in more ways than one. When you see a transformation in a movie now, it's so fake looking. It's so computer generated, and they're still trying to capture what he did back then. And he was a young makeup artist. He wasn't. Yeah. He was maybe working for 7 years. And he was like an apprentice.
The transformation looked good.
Yeah,
like that was good hair.
It was
good.
It was good at everything.
His hair was perfect. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, I actually I hadn't seen this in forever. This was almost like a first watch again. It had been so long, and I generally find myself on Team Savini if we're talking special effects.
Yeah.
But man, you got to hand it to Baker in this one. And they do a good job. If they did it today, he'd be bounding up and down the stairs, and he'd be growling and stuff. It just wouldn't be the same. You can't trick the mind with CGI like you can with those prosthetics, just stretching those feet. Oh,
yeah, awesome. They talk about the footage that they didn't use, and I watched it, and I was like, man, think about that scene, like that transformation scene. Not only is it, and I read about the fact that Rick Baker was approached by Landis in 1971, I think. Landis wrote the script, and he approached Baker, and he's like, listen, I want to do this transformation, because he was a huge fan of the Lon Chaney werewolf movies, but they always did the overlays to make them change. They never did anything.
Gotcha.
So he's like, I want to do this scene. I want this man to transform in one take in front of on screen with no time lapse. How do you do it? And Baker's like, So 10 years went by.
Like he was overwhelmed, or he was like chomping at the bit for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah,
because he knew what to do.
Right, and they had no backing, they had no money. Yeah. And Landis was like, I'm going to make it. And Baker's like, well, I'm waiting.
Gotcha.
And then he got hired to do The Howling, so he started working on The Howling, and then Landis was like, fuck.
Right.
I got to get him. So then he brought him over. So then his apprentice, Baker's apprentice, who worked on RoboCop, wound up doing the werewolves in The Howling. They both came out the same year. Baker's werewolf was so much less traditional, making him look like an oversized Wolverine.
Oh yeah, he just.
it was hulking.
There was no man to it. No. Once it really transformed all the way.
Right.
And another thing that I want to point out, like Dan was saying before, if it was CGI, it would be like right in front of your face all the time, because like the transformed creature wasn't, the werewolf wasn't really that great looking. Mm-hmm. They kind of kept him out of some scenes. You have a lot of people running, and turning around a corner and looking behind them, and they're terrified, but like
it's all editing.
They leave it to the imagination as to what the thing looks like or what the thing's doing. It's kind of like what Hitchcock did with the with the murder scene, with the sounds. It was much worse in your head than it probably looked.
Well, it's a Spielberg trick.
Yeah.
He did it with Jaws. These directors from that time, they also did it in Alien. It's not what you see, it's what you don't see.
Right.
It's that suspense. It's that, and it wasn't really because they didn't have faith in the monster in this movie. I know with Jaws, they didn't really have faith in Bruce the shark. Mm-hmm. He was looking a little animated and a little robotic.
Yeah.
So they edited it in a way because of their restrictions. But this wolf, the only restrictions they really had was being a quadruped. So it's like, you can't put a man in a suit and have him walk like a man. They wanted him on all fours, so they had to figure out a way. So they had like a dolly cart for the bottom half. So when they had him come in and out of the frame, it is a man with his arms, but he's on a dolly cart, so you can't show the dolly cart. So that's why they did a lot of editing. And then there's a hand puppet that they use for the head, for the biting scenes and all that stuff. So it's just one hand puppet.
Right.
And then when he's running around the streets, it's a man on a cart.
Okay.
So he's like walking himself around.
Right.
So they purposely did it because of the suspense, not because of the creature not looking right. Like, there's a story where Landis, basically that transformation scene was supposed to be a lot shorter, but he was so mesmerized by how great the effects were that he actually made it a lot longer, because he was just like, wow.
Yeah, because if you make it a lot longer, you can always cut it down.
Right.
But
I mean, there was so much gold there that he kept a lot of it.
Yeah, it was awesome. And looking back now, I have actually seen like the picture of his hand getting longer, like that scene where he's looking at his hand and he's like screaming because what the hell's going on. I have seen that.
Right.
But when it happened in the movie, I was like, oh, this is the movie. Okay.
And what's funny about that scene and crazy is it's in broad daylight or full light, house light. There's no shadow trickery. You know, the lights are low. The stuff they do now with CGI, oh, we don't want to render that, so we're going to make it dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's in a house, and there's no room for error. It all happens in front of you.
Yeah.
There's nothing covering anything. To have faith in Baker that much to just shoot that, and that was their original idea, was this is going to happen.
Yeah, I can see it happening in a dark room being really helpful and making the job a lot easier.
Right.
But they didn't go that route. I like it.
You have to hand it to a director who can gauge correctly what he has in camera and to shoot around it the right way. You know, too many of these movies, Predator from the 80s, you know, you just see so much of that character that it's like, that guy's just an idiot in a suit. Like, he moves great. He's in shadow. He's cloaked or whatever. He looks really cool and intimidating. And then he comes back to full view and just stands there, and you're like, oh, that's a guy in like a rubber hockey suit. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
But this one, the transformation is so good that he can have faith in it, leave it in the camera the way it is, and then, shoot around it later for the sake of chaos. Can't say enough good things about when they're doing like the dolly shots chasing the guy through the subway. You know, where it's subjective camera, which is a thing we're going to talk about a lot going forward with slasher movies and Giallo and stuff, where it's killer perspective.
Right.
So the camera is the view of the killer. But this is the best example I've ever seen of a full speed chase in the subjective, and it gives you that adrenaline rush of just, it's horror, but it's also just like the chase. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Now, I asked you earlier if you were familiar with John Landis. Now, George, have you ever seen a short film from the mid-'80s called Thriller?
The Thriller, like
the music
the
video?
music video?
The Michael Jackson video?
Yes. Yeah.
That is directed by John Landis, and the special effects are Rick Baker.
Rick Baker.
Oh.
And
cool.
Actually, I come to this movie through Thriller, because growing up in the early 90s, before we all knew, we were big Michael Jackson fans at our house, and
right.
The making of Thriller documentary is available on YouTube now. We had to tape it off MTV back in the day.
Yep.
But they go through the entire process, layer by layer, of how they turned Michael Jackson into something that was threatening to women.
What's funny is I think I was, when did that video come out? 83?
It'd be like 83, 84.
Okay, so I was a little younger than when I saw London, and I didn't put two and two together. I didn't know they were made by the same person. I didn't even know. I watched the making of, and I saw Rick Baker, and I saw him talk about it, and I saw him say he was one of the zombies, and John Landis and all that, but I never really cared about all that. I was more about, oh, that's a really cool werewolf, because the werewolf in the Thriller movie, I was just like, I was blown away.
It's more of like a werecat.
A werecat,
got a little bit more lion to it.
But still, I mean, that transformation and everything. And then when I saw Miracle Werewolf, I was like, these are very similar. And then I found out. I was like, oh, okay. But two of my favorite memories of my childhood are those two things. Staying up till midnight to watch the Thriller video when it premiered.
Yeah.
And sneaking downstairs and watching Werewolf in London.
Nice.
Like 100 times.
Now, Landis is a guy, while we're talking about John Landis, he reminds me a lot of Bob Clark. Are you guys familiar with Bob Clark? He's a director.
What did he do?
No.
So he did Christmas Story. He did Porky's.
Yes.
But he started off doing movies like Black Christmas and children shouldn't play with dead things. Like, he starts off in the horror genre but branches out, but like everything he puts together is like quality, you know. And
Right.
Landis is the same way. He may be doing, you know, Animal House comedy or Kentucky Fried Movie, you know, or Blues Brothers, which is
Blues Brothers, yeah.
an all-time favorite of mine.
Those two are in the can before he made. They were the reason why he was able to get the money to make Werewolf in London. Because when he wrote it, he was 18. So he was 1969, I think, when he wrote it. And it was shelved. The first draft was shelved for like 10 years.
Oh my God, how is that possible?
Development hell, man.
Well, he couldn't get anybody to fund it or no producers would get behind it because they said it's too scary to be a comedy and it's too, you know, funny to be a horror movie.
They were wrong.
They were wrong. Well,
they were really wrong.
He kind of started a genre in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about, like, I don't know if you've seen Beetlejuice or Gremlins.
Yeah.
Or what was the other one? Evil Dead 2. Like Evil Dead has that.
I've
Shaun
never
of the
seen
Dead.
that. I've seen Beetlejuice, but like I haven't really watched it.
Right.
I have seen Gremlins though.
So it's that mixture of comedy and horror that he pretty much put together.
I like it.
I feel like we really brushed up against like a portal, you know, or like a door labeled "Do Not Open" for George, as we're like, oh yeah, by the way, George, development hell, the place where the best scripts that have never been made are just waiting.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ready for that yet.
No.
But just know that's like a whole corner of film development is all the alternate scripts that get canned on the way to a development that actually makes it to market, but also a pile of scripts that are either too expensive to shoot or, you know, the rights issues have bogged them down to the point that they've been sitting there for 20 years and you can read them in, you know, bootleg copies, but they're just waiting on an opportunity.
And sometimes, like with Landis, with this, he was the writer and the director, so it's his baby, and the studio had easily come in and ruin that. Like they wanted him to cast Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi as the Jack and David characters, and he's like, they're filming Neighbors right now. They just come off of Blues Brothers. They're almost too known.
Yeah,
I want it to be unknowns, which is great for us because that's the first place I ever saw Griffin Dunn in anything, and I love him. He's the Jack character.
Yeah,
you know, everything he's in I love. I saw an interview with Landis, and he said he wanted to make a contemporary version of an old film, which I think he successfully did.
Yeah,
it's crazy to think he let it sit from 69 or so until 80, 81, and it did still feel fresh and modern. I mean, that's just testament to his writing ability and also his flexibility on set. One thing that I noticed this time, having watched the making of Thriller a dozen times or so over my life, that opening scene with David, his dialogue, but also his delivery, he's just doing a John Landis impression. Like, that's straight out of the mouth of John Landis, inflection and all. And that's just, we talked about the Lorne Michaels elements of Rob Lowe's failed impression in Wayne's World.
Yeah.
But this was... this wasn't the Dr. Evil version of John Landis. This was just like a really good impression of John Landis in those opening scenes with David's dialogue. It was fun.
Probably came from like pre-production phone meetings and stuff where he just kind of picked it up.
Table reads and stuff, yeah.
But I looked at Landis's, because I'm like, I look at his IMDb and I'm like, okay, Animal House, Blues Brothers, Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Twilight Zone, Thriller, Spies Like Us, Three Amigos, Coming to America. And I'm thinking, this man directed my childhood. Like, he's almost like, Ivan Reitman and all these guys. Like, everything that they made influenced me.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That these two.
I haven't seen all those, but I know.
You will.
I know all of those movies. Like, yeah, that's.
But I think about, like, Rick Baker and John Landis met when they were both young apprentices, basically. And it's kind of like when you hear the stories about when Spielberg met Lucas and they worked on films together.
Yeah.
Like, there's such icons, and they weren't at the time.
Right.
It's mind-boggling.
Love it.
Good stuff.
Now, Travis talked about the Universal monsters. Have you ever seen any of the old, like, right around the beginning of the Hays Code era, Universal series. You know, your Draculas, your Frankensteins, your Wolfmans.
Creature.
I don't know. I'd say no.
You should watch them. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean they are. I
That's
don't
my-
want to say they're
my quick
dated because they
review.
are.
Dracula's still scary, man. I showed that to my kids thinking, oh,
Yeah.
it's the 30s. It'll be Hays Code. And then I looked it up and it's, oh, it's pre-code. Yeah, that's too scary. Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry, kids.
The big five are still hold up. Yeah, they're black and white. Yeah, they're from the 50s and 30s. You know, Dracula's 31. Frankenstein's in the 30s too. But it's like they still hold up. The effects. I mean, the sound isn't that good, but
Okay.
everything else, I would definitely check them out.
Yeah.
You didn't really say you had much knowledge of the werewolf lore other than the full moon,
Mm-hmm.
silver bullets, and all that stuff. So, how did you feel when they kind of crapped on that?
Or did you realize that they were changing it?
I didn't realize it. At what point did they change it?
Well, you find out when he talks to Jack about silver bullets.
Yeah, and Jack just goes, "Come on, like,
Yeah, right.
you know."
That and they added so much. They added the tortured soul, the nightmares, which is something you didn't see before.
Mm-hmm.
The walking the world as the undead until
Yeah, no, I didn't know enough about the lore to know that was new.
that didn't exist. So
Okay.
it's like Landis took liberty to create new lore, which a lot of it became canon
Gotcha.
for werewolves. But he added a lot to it, like just the whole undead thing and being visited by Jack. To me, was it added so much to the movie.
Yeah, I liked how good David felt the day after,
Mhm.
not remembering anything. Like, he felt alive and like he felt great, and it was just like,
Invigorated.
yeah, in such great spirits. It's like,
It's all that
That's so
adrenaline
funny.
he ingested
yeah.
from the people he killed.
I was like, yo, I love that. That's a side effect of,
But they were
killing
building
6
you up
people.
to that because they kept showing him not hungry.
Yeah,
So it's like, okay, he's not hungry, but when he became the wolf and he was just so driven, like thirsty for blood, that he didn't realize that he doesn't know why his body is telling him why he's not hungry. Because then when he becomes the wolf, he's just completely famished. Like he needs it. I love the animal aspect of it.
yeah. Having Jack come back and multiple times, and him thinking he's crazy, and you know what's going on with that. That was. I mean, I'm sitting there watching it like, is he hallucinating?
Right.
And and then every time he comes back, he looks different, and he's gotten more dead.
Now, how did you feel about the dream sequence with did they get you with the jump scare with the second wake up?
No, no.
When she opened the blinds?
No, because when he woke up and she goes, and I had a feeling that when
Right.
she opened that it was going to be, something that was going to be scary. I didn't think it would be another, like, a dream within a dream,
Right.
but I knew it was going to be something that was meant to scare you as soon as she opens that curtain.
I found on YouTube the reactions from 1981 of the crowd from that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had audio,
Yeah.
and just the quiet right when he wakes up the second time or the first time. There's like a calm, and so you can hear the crowd kind of talking to each other about what they just watched.
Yeah.
And then she opens the curtains, and you hear their reaction, like they were not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know why I had a feeling. In my
yeah,
gut.
I mean it's kind of set up a little bit.
Yeah, because every time he comes back, he looks worse, right? And
You look like shit, Jack.
yeah, by the time they get to that point, like, there's like no flesh on his face, and I'm like, how is he pronouncing his P's?
Yes.
And I'm like, I was like, George, stop being George, just be a regular
Well,
person.
there's two things that bother me about this movie, even after seeing it a million times, is he's enunciating too well to not have lips.
Right.
And there's one part at the very end where the wolf is cornered at the back of the street,
Mm-hmm.
and they play the howling sound, and his mouth isn't moving, so they just kind of throw it in there.
Oh, I didn't even notice
And
that.
I saw it. I was like, oh, man, if that little clip was
No,
taken out, it would have been perfect, because it
Yeah.
did look like they forced an extra howl in there, but they didn't have any manipulation to the mouth of the wolf, so it kind of looks strange. And the howl alone, I remember hearing that howl for the first time when I was 9 years old, and I'm so used to the, that old Universal wolf howl, and I heard that, I was like, what does this thing look like?
Yeah,
because it totally changes what you know about monster movies, about werewolves. It's like, oh, it's a dog, it's this, but that howl, I still, when I hear it, I get like, not anxious, but because I know it's coming, but it's just so different than what you're used to.
Yeah. Also, I loved in the theater scene how indifferent all of the 6 people were about his life. Like, and they don't care about. They all had great ideas about how he could kill himself, and they were very willing to provide them. It cracked me up, and I was like, "Yo, this is nutty. I like it."
So, what did you think of the giant car crash and the chaos of the moment there in the kind of big final act?
I don't know. I thought it was excessive.
Yeah, it was. Have you ever seen Blues Brothers? Because they do a very similar giant car crash just for the hell of it.
No. Well, I have seen Blues Brothers, but it's one of those things that I don't really remember.
I'm really interested to know, because we're talking about this development of the script. And when these ideas come to Landis, I'd be willing to bet that having been written in the late 60s, that the undead purgatory thing, at least somewhat, is influenced by George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I'm willing to put that out there.
It's possible.
But then I wonder, chicken and egg, does Blues Brothers have a giant car crash because he'd already written that for London? Or...
Right.
Does London get a car crash because it went over so well in Blues Brothers? That's my question for John Landis when I get to sit down with him next week.
Yeah.
I have a question for him, too, if you get to sit down with him.
What's that?
Let me know. I noticed something. After seeing this movie, I would say over 100 times I've seen this movie.
Okay.
Now, if you caught this, then good for you. When Nurse Alex comes out of... they're sitting in bed talking. She's wearing her NYU t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, holy shit, she collects nothing but American stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
She had a Casablanca post. When he walks into her apartment, she's got Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck all over the place. She has the Casablanca poster. She's got tchotchkes everywhere. They're all American stuff. American radios. It just looks like 1950s America in her house, right?
I did not notice that.
That's pretty
good.
But
that's awesome.
Like
and it dawned on me because somebody was... I saw someone's review of this movie, and it was a younger person. They were complaining about the love story. And it's actually the opposite of what I was talking about last week, where they didn't build the relationship well enough. I think they did, for maybe not so much for the love feelings, but there definitely was chemistry between them the whole time. There was probably 2 weeks went by.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, it's almost like the Nightingale effect.
Yes.
But I almost thought she brought him home because she put him in her collection.
Yes.
I know people in real life that are like that. And that's, it's kind of weird in real life, but in the movie it just makes for good character development.
It's so funny. She collects American stuff, and he was the ultimate piece to her collection. He was an American man,
and
she brought him home for her collection. That, to me, gave her... I was like, are you kidding me? So I want to ask him if he purposely did that, or if that's just my observation.
Now, were the actors that played David and Jack, were they actually American?
Yes, they're both American, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was just thinking that as it developed, and I was like, oh, okay, he's going to be the werewolf. And I guess they established it that they were visiting, I guess they established that they were visiting from America. But I don't know why I just pictured him in my head as two.
Well, they were that beginning conversation, that improv conversation in the beginning, kind of establishes that we should have went here, but we came here. We have 3 months. We can hit Italy later. They're obviously backpacking across Europe,
right?
So, and they're very American. And then when they go into this,
I didn't see them as very American.
No,
but it's fine. That's why I asked, were they trying to act American or were they actually American? It's fine. It's no
Apparently
big deal.
the slaughtered lamb, when Griffin Dunn says, what kind of ad is that? Like, for a pub. Like, that's an improv line. Like, he just saw that and he probably was like, that's what you named it, the slaughtered lamb? Which is funny because it's basically they sent them out. They sent them out as a sacrifice.
Yes.
So that the wolf wouldn't come into town, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, the sheep and lamb presence in the first act of this movie is bordering on too much. Like, every time they go outside, another herd of sheep go by. I'm like, okay, we get it. And there's a wolf. It's gonna eat somebody. Like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Like they ride in on the truck
full
with a
of
bunch of
sheep.
lambs, sheep.
Well, I thought the symbolism was more of sacrifice, not so much of him being a wolf among sheep. But I guess it goes both ways.
And no Warren Zevon in the entire movie. What the heck? What the heck? I mean, if the song was "Werewolves Are Cool," okay, yeah, okay, fine. If it's "I like to do night stuff in London," okay, fine. You don't have to put that in your movie. I mean, you got every other song that's ever mentioned a moon in the darn movie.
Yeah.
But you don't have Werewolves of London in your movie about London with werewolves in it. What are
I
you
read
doing?
somewhere that Naughton and Dunn both questioned that, and they still don't have an answer.
I'm
so
sure
I don't
it's
know
a rights issue, or Tom Cruise was like, "We're using that in my movie. You can't have it." You like my Tom Cruise impression? That's a real good one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's like he
Wow.
was on the podcast for a second with us.
Are you jumping on the couch right now? Apparently, he got the rights to do all those songs pretty easily, but there were 2 or 3 songs that would not make it in the movie. They said no. One was a Bob Dylan song. I think it was his version of Blue Moon. And what was the who was the singer that became converted to Islam?
Oh, Cat Stevens.
Yeah, there was a Cat Stevens song that he said it's against his beliefs.
Oh, Cats in the Cradle.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, but again, he's picking songs basically that have the word moon in them.
Mhm.
Okay, that's one way to
Gotcha.
pick your soundtrack. Guys, I do wonder though if it's another thing that when we talk about this weird kind of period in the refrigerator from the late 60s until the early 80s, like, you may not be able to shoehorn in, or maybe it's too on the nose, maybe it's
Right.
not subtle enough for a movie
Well, apparently
where the werewolf eats the sheep people.
he apparently picked London just because it was cheaper. It was going to be in Paris.
Really?
So, he does have a love of the old black and white horror movies, and there were 2 other werewolf movies that took place in London. So he had that going for him, which is nice. There was no significance to London. It was just basically where they filmed.
Hey, so while we're talking about Katie Holmes, did anybody else, and this is, okay, podcast listeners, I am obsessed with Batman movies.
Okay.
The comics are good. The old TV show's wonderful, but my heart and soul basically bridge from Batman 89 through Dark Knight Rises. Like, that's kind of my whole worldview is those movies.
Okay.
Did anybody else think that Alex looked like a British Maggie Gyllenhaal?
A little bit,
It was
yeah.
bugging me the whole time that they have the same face.
Yeah, that pouty face, the bigger eyes. Yeah, I get it.
And then
Yeah,
that makeup
see it.
as the guy degrades in Purgatory, he looks more and more like Two-Face from The Dark Knight.
Mm.
I mean, there's
This is
some
conspiracy
really,
theory right here.
really Dark Knighty kind of makeup going on there. I
Okay.
think that's just me, though. I think that I run everything through the bat lens.
Nice.
Yeah.
You talked about the ending, like the car crash and all that stuff, but while I was watching it again for the 100th time, I noticed that it kind of resembled the same last 20 minutes of King Kong's life. That chaos,
in
the
a
breaking
way.
through a theater door,
In a way,
running
yeah.
through the streets. She comes to calm him down. The whole scene with the because they don't have guns. The police don't have guns in London, and the scene of them, the SWAT, the English SWAT.
Yeah, where's RoboCop when you need him?
Yeah, when they're in the truck and they're loading, that was reminiscent of them getting in the airplanes and flying towards the Empire State.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just had that same Beauty and the Beast feel.
Yeah, although at the end, the werewolf does like his face kind of drops, like he's
just
not.
a tad.
Yeah, just a little bit, but I don't think they show it from what I remember. He didn't. Did he lunge at her?
Yes.
Okay, so he did. So all right, so that's different.
Did he, though?
like
I
I
don't
I've
know.
only
You
seen
don't
it the
really
one
see it.
time recently, but
They shot him too fast.
I
Damn
got the
cops.
impression that he was allowing himself to be shot, but I don't remember him ever provoking. I mean, I hate to get political, but
No, it looks to me it looked like death by cop.
Werewolf.
you mean like
Lives Matter.
suicide by cop?
Yeah, like I think he
Yeah, suicide by cop is
He
more like it.
probably suicide by cop.
Yeah.
Like I think I don't want to put human thought because then he wouldn't have done everything else he did.
Well, you
But
can.
seeing her
You can put human
Right.
thought in the head because when he saw her
he did lower his
she
snarl.
spoke to him, he responded to it. So there was some.
But he does lunge at her. He does begin to lunge.
I'm gonna have to
when
go
they sh-
back
when
and
they
look
shoot.
at that again.
Yeah, but does he do it on purpose?
I don't
To
know.
kill himself because
Get
he knows
John
that's
Landis
what he
on the
needs to
phone.
do?
I want to know.
Well, obviously they left it that way on purpose.
Yeah.
I think they let you decide.
But it was new.
I think it was probably just Directive 4. I mean, he's just a soul trapped in a Oh, that's a different thing. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh man.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was good though.
Do you like a little tragedy in your horror movies, George?
I love tragedy.
I don't
Do you
get
feel
it,
that-
man. I mean, I like it in this movie because it's not like it doesn't bury the knife too deep in your like soul and twist it in your heart and stuff. So you're not like bawling at the end of the movie unless you're really
But it
into
is-
dead
it's
werewolves,
tragic.
in which case you might be all over it. But
Okay, so here's the thing about tragedies. And this is it's a philosophy of mine. I'm going to philosophize for a minute. If you haven't noticed, life is a tragedy.
Yes.
Dan, are you happy?
I mean, podcasting is fun.
I mean, in your life, with your family and your kids.
Yeah,
You're happy.
I
It's
mean,
a happy life, right?
Yeah, things are good, man. For now.
Okay. You're living in a tragedy.
What are you talking
We're all
about?
doomed.
No, this
We're all doomed.
this ends well, right? I mean, at the end we just credits roll, and then we
The
reset
moment-
and start over with more continues. Isn't that how this goes?
Maybe. Some might say. No, but anyway, there's what I'm trying to get at is there's beauty in tragedy.
And there's beauty in suffering too.
It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be crying at a tragedy. Like my favorite tragedy is Road to Perdition, where, the whole time, Tom Hanks is trying to shelter his kid, keep his kid out of the world that he's in. And, at the end, he doesn't succeed. Right? But basically, the kid at that point is a man, based on that action
And
at the end.
then he moves to Las Vegas. Is that for part 2? And then you go back and look at Tom Hanks' childhood. Is that? Oh no, different franchise.
It's beautiful. The end of that movie is beautiful, even though it's sad that he couldn't, in the end, keep his son from that life. Or not that life, but keep his son innocent. He couldn't do it. It's impossible anyway. It was a tragedy, but it was beautiful.
Hey, George, have you ever found Bugs Bunny attractive when he dressed up like a lady bunny?
I just spilled my heart and soul.
No.
You asked me if I think Lady Bugs Bunny's attractive.
It's a little
All right.
tragedy. It's a little comedy.
Trying to break the mood a little bit.
Yeah.
He got all deep. Okay, so George, have you ever seen American Werewolf in London?
No. I have seen an American Werewolf in London.
Hey-o! Awesome.
All right, Travis. Why don't we tell George what's stalking him in the night for next week?
All right, you want to do tragedy?
Sure.
we're going to throw epic tragedy at you. We are going to watch Clerks.
Okay.
The great Kevin Smith Clerks.
There's multiple Clerks, right?
There's a Clerks 2.
Okay.
There's a Clerks 3 coming, maybe. He keeps
Yeah.
promising, and we keep hoping.
Once he gets poor enough, he'll make 3. Which he will never be. Cause
Okay.
he's cool. So, Clerks is up.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's get to work. Well, guys, thank you for joining us again on the Remedial Film Class podcast. As always, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Remedial Film Pod. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/remedialfilmpod. And, of course, you can email us at remedialfilmpod@gmail.com. We'll see you back here soon.